Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another Chart of the Week. I'm Lisa Miller. If you've listened to my podcast, you know that one of my very favorite topics is what was your first job? And it's our natural inclination to answer that question with what was our first job professionally. But I always want to go deeper than that. And I wanted to understand their first jobs. That's where you hear the newspaper routes, the babysitting, mowing the lawns, painting high school lockers, working in restaurants, being a busboy. And the aha moment that these executives and thought leaders have is wow, the skills that they learned from those early jobs have really shaped us. But they didn't really have them top of mind. And what I've heard though is that Gen Z, they're not getting those jobs. So I wanted to dig into that data. So, of course, I put that in my survey. Let's take a look at this chart. Now, this is actually 3 months of data, so it's 3,000 consumers. And it's kind of shocking, not shocking, but look at the percentages of people by generation that actually, when did they start their first job? You can see the under 16, Gen Z is much less likely to have a job when they're under 16, whether it's babysitting, mowing the lawns, any of that, versus prior generations. And boomers, almost half of them had jobs when they were younger. And so what the implication is think about it. If you have children, you know what I'm talking about here, is that there's so much going on with homework, AP classes, club sports, team sports, and it's all this push and chasing to get to college and building out those resumes to get into college because it's so competitive. But what if we're doing that generation a disservice by not providing the space for these early types of jobs? We know that there's labor shortages, but maybe it's because we're prioritizing the wrong things. And what this next chart shows you is there's actually a lifetime value maybe of these early work skills. Now, I know that there's correlation causation, and we're going to dig into that. But one interesting insight, this is just Millennial and Gen X, and we looked at those that were making over $100,000 and when did they have their first job. And it's fascinating because if you had your job under 16, you're more likely to be making a higher income. Now, the first thing you might say, well, how does education play out? It was not, it was flat. So if I look at the differences by education, that wasn't the key. One thing that was also different though, check this out. The younger that you started working, the more likely you are to be married versus single. Interesting. I wonder if the people are getting married later. Maybe it's because they didn't have a first job and they couldn't have these interpersonal skills, working with coworkers, knowing how to chit chat. So there's so many unintended consequences of Gen Z starting into the workforce later. So what's the so what, now what? The first thing is if you have kids, let's say 5 or 6 and older, put them to work in your house, give them chores, give them responsibilities, stretch their capabilities. That will serve them well. If you have teenagers, tell them to get a job. That again, we want to build these lifelong lessons for them. If you're a hiring manager, give the younger kids a chance. You know, there's one of my clients, they actually start hiring at 15 and it's been wildly successful for them. So give the younger kids a chance. And it's not that they're lazy and they don't want to work. They don't feel like they have the confidence or the skills to do the job because they haven't had the exposure to what that's like. So with this knowledge, I think we can actually make a big difference and an impact for Gen Z and then Gen Alpha coming up in the next pipeline. Well, I hope you enjoyed this one. Make sure to register for the August 13th virtual Lunch and Learn, and we're going to go deep into Gen Z. You won't want to miss it. All right, until next time, thank you.